So today we're going to put one of our new Corvette shifters in Aaron here's Z06. And we're going to just kind of go over all the things that you need to do the install.
And then I'm going to enjoy it.
Yep. So some of the things that you'll need to do this job specifically are going to be a 7mm and a 10mm nut driver. You're going to need a 3/16 and a 1/4 inch Allen key. You'll also need a 5mm Allen key, and of course you'll need your trusty T40 Torx bit and a T15 in most cases, along with ratchet and an extension. And I also like to use a pick in order to get some of the factory plastic clips unsnapped. So included with the shifter kit is the shifter assembly itself, the bracket that is made for the installation process, because you'll need this for future setups, mounting hardware for the assembly, the shifter stick, hardware for the stick, which is also included as part of the mounting bracket, and then isolators for the assembly. We're going to show you how to remove the console, trim panel, the shifter boot, and gain access to the factory shifter box, and then show you how to swap that part out as well. So the first thing we need to do is start getting this console loose. So we're going to just start by removing all the fasteners that we can access easily to start with. Here at the back you'll find two plastic caps. When removed they expose two 10mm nuts. I'm pretty sure that's the same on every year C6 Corvette. We also need to pry the emergency brake boot up, and it's held in with some metal clips that clip into plastic. There it goes. So we'll get the boot for the emergency brake pulled up, and that will expose a couple of 7mm screws, and you'll need to remove those. Once all your screws are removed, I like to go ahead and remove the shifter boot. And in this car, pull the boot out and just pull it up above to gain access to the screw that holds the knob to the stick. In most cases, this is going to be a Torx. This is currently with an aftermarket shifter, so it also has an aftermarket screw. Then you remove the screw, the shifter knob pulls right off. So now what we want to do is we want to remove this center console. So you start by just pulling lightly. It'll have some clips that just hold it in place. Nothing dramatic once you've got all those screws removed. Then we're gonna grab the back of our center console, pick up and pull it out. So just pull that back, like so. Continue pulling the trim panel back, making sure to disconnect your wiring, traction control, your 12-volt accessory, and your hazard lights. Sometimes this can be a little tricky. Also on models equipped with heated seats, you'll have to unplug these. Okay, so all of your electrical connections have been disconnected, and your trim panel can move out of the way. There's the foam. Once you've got this exposed, you've got the factory boot that bolts down. It's secured with 10mm nuts. You're going to remove those. And you're going to remove the boot. And you'll see this boot has been cut to accommodate this aftermarket shifter that's already in this car. With our assembly, we do not require that this be cut. One of the key benefits of ours is that with this being uncut, you simply stuff it back over the top of the aftermarket shifter unit, and it creates a better seal between outside and inside than having to physically cut this like all the other manufacturers want you to do. Okay, once the boots are removed and out of the way, your shifter assembly is fully exposed. So before loosening the bolts, shift the transmission to neutral and ensure the vehicle is in fact in neutral. Then you're ready to take out the T40 Torx screws that are holding this shifter in. Alright, with the screws removed, you're simply just going to pick up on the assembly and just pull it straight out of the shift rod. As you can see, the seals in this one are, coming apart. The shaft itself is just moving all around. It's wore out. And one of the problems with this is some of your aftermarket shifter manufacturers want you to reuse these pieces that are already wearing out. So what we decided to do was eliminate that scenario altogether and just make everything. Okay, so when you unbox your new shifter assembly, it's going to come equipped with this pyramid shaped or triangular shaped bracket, and what that is your new alignment jig. So the way it's going to work is you're going to fasten it in the car with the two bolts that hold the shifter down. The shifter rail assembly will bolt to it, and then once you have all that stuff in place and tight, you're going to remove these two screws on the base, and then you're going to remove this bolt. And this bolt also doubles as your one of your shifter handle bolts. But then you'll be able to take that bracket loose, save the bracket, because it's very important. If you need to remove your shifter at any time for any service work, if you need to pull your transmission out, and you go to put this stuff back together, you've got to have this bracket to align your shifter back in center. It doesn't use a hole in the front like the factory does. We eliminated that because that's part of the whole weather sealed ability that we have, is we had to eliminate the hole that just drills straight into your shifter assembly down at the bottom. Okay, we're going to open up our hardware bag. And you'll notice that there are two urethane spacers that come with your kit. And they're intended to be mounted in these pockets. I personally recommend putting just a touch of RTV on the back side and going ahead and popping these in. And I would probably do this before you start your shifter install. That way it'll be kind of set up, by the time you get to this step. But go ahead and just put a little RTV on them just to hold them in place to make sure that they don't fall out on you while you're doing your install. So I'd probably wait at least 15 minutes if you're going to do this step to ensure that your RTV sets up enough that your bushings aren't going to fall out during the install. Again, gluing those spacers in is really going to help you out here. So you're just going to reach in to find this shift rod. You're going to pull it up to the edge of your cutout just like that, so you can get your eyes on it. And you're just going to kind of feed the shaft of the shifter down into that rod, and then let it fall in place. And just go ahead and take your new stainless hardware and go ahead and get those bolts started. So once you got those started, then you're going to want to just run those in. We don't need to tighten them yet because we still need to get the bolt into the shift rail assembly, but we're just going to run those down until they're finger tight. But they still need to be loose enough to let you move the shifter box back and forward. So finger tight, and then just back it off by a 1/16 of a turn and you're good. Now on the shift rail assembly, we're going to reuse the factory T40 torque screw, and if you'll notice, all three of the screws from the factory that hold the box on and the rail are the same screw. Torque screws can get worn over time, people using the wrong size, people using a tool that's wore out or the incorrect tool. Just look at the 3 bolts and honestly just pick the one that looks the best. So then you're going to stick the bolt through the notch that's in the rail. And we're going to grab our T40 Torques. I'm going to run this screw down. Just going to snug it. And then we're going to come back to our mounting hardware. We're going to fill this thing out and just kind of let it feel like that shift rail bolt is in the center of your notch. Again, not too critical because your accuracy is held by this fixture, but this is just kind of my method on things a little bit. Then we're just going to snug these screws down, and really from there you're good to go ahead and tighten them. And then from there we want to tighten the T40 shift rail screw. Now our assembly is fully bolted in and we're ready to remove the jig. So start by removing the bolted nut at the top. again, I recommend saving the nut, and definitely you have to save the bracket because it is your alignment tool now. And then we're going to remove the 2 screws at the base of the alignment bracket, and they're just barely snug, so shouldn't have any problem getting those out. We're going to pull those all the way out. You're going to remove your alignment bracket, set it to the side, then you're going to take the same 2 screws and put them back into the holes you just removed them from. And then we're going to tighten those in place. Don't go crazy on these, they're 1/4 20. There's no need to get them super tight. Okay, now at this point, this is where other manufacturers would be telling you to cut this boot. Had this been an OEM boot, we would not be telling you to cut this. We designed our shifter specifically to be smaller, lighter, and to keep you from having to cut on your car. So had this been an uncut version, you could just stick it right back on. You're going to replace your 10mm nuts. And put your factory insulating foam back in position also. Okay, so now we're just going to put the center console back together. A lot of times this factory foam will come out, and I do like that in there, so I'm going to put this back in. So we're just going to put this panel back in. We'll start by hooking up some of the electrical connectors. Now, before you snap this back into place, we want to replace our console portion as well. Okay. Okay, once all the clips are snapped back in place, you can start replacing the hardware. I'm going to start with this pair of 7mm screws that was removed earlier. Then I'm going to move on to the 10mm hardware. Now you can replace your covers, go over your hardware, and then we're going to put the boot for the emergency brake back in place. Just like that. And now we can move on to the stick. We have a bolt-on stick set up, very similar to all the other shifters that we manufacture. This stick is made to accept the factory C6 and C7 shift knob. You can see it's keyed and it's also timed so that it puts it at the appropriate angle. So using one bolt from your hardware kit and the other bolt from your assembly jig, you're going to pop the stick on and just start the bolts. 1/4 inch Allen key, we're able to tighten the hardware. I like to just use the stick as my leverage instead of putting the transmission in gear and pulling against the stop. So now we're ready to put the knob back on. You can see this stick is threaded from both sides, but you can only put the knob on one direction. So you want your gear selection facing just like it was. The flat notch will be to the front or to the radio side. And you'll just press this down on. You should have that lined up, and you can just put your screw in and tighten it right up. So no need to get carried away with tightening this screw either. It's pretty small. Okay, now we're ready to stuff our boot back in place, and this can be a little bit of a challenge also. So just take your time, be patient, try not to get angry at it. Alright, now that the shift boot's back in place, now you're ready to go for a test drive. Oh boy.
Ooh, it's farther back. That's interesting.
Yeah, they do theirs straight up and down.
Yeah.
We mimic the factory location.
No kidding. I like that. I like where it's at.
Yeah.
Because that's the nice thing on the F-body. You can literally push it with one finger from second, and it'll automatically go into third.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one will too.
Yeah,
so this has got a centering spring in it that one didn't have.
Correct. Yeah.
It's way more like positive in my hand rather than I don't feel like I'm twisting a shaft.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a bunch of spring to it. Obviously, I want to drive it.